Now, I would like to hand over to the speaker, J. Lawrence Stevens. Over to you, sir.
Well, thank you very much. I'm in the middle part of the United States, so to everybody to the west of me, I'll say good morning. To everybody to the east of me, I'll say good afternoon, and thank you for taking the time to join us for the webinar today. This is a topic I like to speak about because I worked for the FDA for many years, but for 7 years I was the director of the FDA's import office in Los Angeles, California. And I've had about 100 people working for me, handling all of the entries coming into the United States, primarily from the Far East. If you're watching the news, the people working for the FDA may not be that busy right now because of the shutdown of the port. And if you're an importer who imports through the Port of Los Angeles, I empathize with you in the sense of the problems you may be having just getting your commodities into the port. But today we're going to talk about how to import products, what the FDA does. If you're an experienced importer, a lot of this is going to be pretty basic for you. This process is designed to kind of go through the basics of importing. If you're new to the importing business, or if you import one commodity and you're thinking about importing other commodities, if you work for a large business that imports a lot of stuff, we'll talk about dealing with FDA and resolving import issues, that kind of stuff. So let's go ahead and get started with the first slide. The first thing I wanted to emphasize is the FDA is not the only government agency that importers have to deal with. The primary other one other than FDA is the U.S. Customs and Border Protection. CCB has offices at every major port around the country. They have many more offices than FDA does. And it's their computer system through which all the entries are filed, and we'll talk a little bit about that and how FDA interfaces with their computer system. The Department of Commerce has some fishery requirements that they look into, specific kinds of fisheries. The Consumer Product Safety Commission, if you're an importer of toys or consumer products, things that many of the stuff that's sold in the Walmarts, for example, the Consumer Product Safety Commission sets the requirements for those and will be responsible for reviewing entries of those kinds of products. And then the Department of Agriculture. They are the ones who handle the food that FDA doesn't handle. In other words, they handle meat and poultry. So if you're an importer of meat from foreign countries, the USDA will be the department that you deal with. But for the vast majority of you, I'm sure that's on this phone, who are importing FDA-regulated products, we're going to talk today about what FDA's requirements are and how those can be met. What is the FDA? The FDA is like any regulatory agency. They get their authority through federal laws passed by Congress, and every requirement that FDA requires of you on an imported product as a result of a federal law. And the basic laws that FDA has, the Congress has enacted over the years to give FDA the authority they have, were the 1906 Food and Drug Act, which was the first Food and Drug Act, and that's when FDA was established at that time. They had their 100th anniversary a few years ago. I was still working for FDA at that time, and I basically did have some of this history I've lived through. For example, I wasn't around in 1938 when the drug safety laws were passed, or in 1962 I did not work for FDA when the efficacy or effectiveness requirement was added for pre-approval of drugs. But I was with FDA in 1976 when the medical device amendments was passed, and actually left FDA in 1982 to work in the medical device industry for almost 20 years, and then returned to FDA in November of 2000. So I have a split career where the center part of my career was actually spent in private industry, in which case I, like many of you, had to figure out the FDA rules